Now, as a fighter, Steve McQueen, now he is good in that department because that son of a gun got the toughness
The
in him.
secret
Steve
empire of
McQueen.
Steve McQueen. Steve McQueen wasn't just a Hollywood movie star. He was a mystery wrapped in leather jackets, fast cars, and cool silence. He became known as the King of Cool, with a stare that could say more than words and a screen presence that made crowds go silent. But behind the fame, McQueen was hiding something few people knew. While most stars of his time were spending money wildly, McQueen was quietly building a secret fortune. He owned dozens of rare cars and motorcycles, real estate in quiet corners of the country, and private collections worth millions. Even more shocking, he had made secret business deals that continued to earn money long after he passed away. When he died in 1980, most people thought he left behind little due to cancer treatment costs and lawsuits. But that wasn't true. His wealth was never gone, it was just hidden. And decades later, the discovery of a dusty barn filled with untouched treasures revealed a side of McQueen that fans had never seen. From sealed vaults to licensing deals that still bring in money today, Steve McQueen left behind a financial legacy so big it made his family rich beyond belief. His fortune, once invisible, now stands as one of the most surprising stories in Hollywood history. A tough childhood and a hard-earned attitude as to McQueen's road to success didn't start with luxury. In fact, his early life was full of pain and rejection. Born in 1930, his father walked out on the family when Steve was just a baby. His mother struggled with addiction and left him more than once. He was passed from relative to relative, eventually landing in a reform school called Boys Republic in Chino, California. There, he learned to survive in a world where kindness was rare instead of breaking him. The harsh environment gave him an edge of survival instinct that he carried throughout his life. He learned to trust no one, rely on himself, and stand up when pushed down. Later, he joined the Marines, where he clashed with authority figures and even spent time in military jail. But he finished his service and took that same rebel spirit with him to Hollywood. Unlike other stars, McQueen didn't care about fitting in. He didn't follow scripts perfectly, showed up late, and sometimes walked off sets, but audiences loved him anyway. His roles didn't feel like acting, they felt real because McQueen was just being himself. That raw energy, mixed with silent strength, made him a star. But behind the camera, he was building something no one knew about: an empire of wealth and strategy hidden in plain sight. From fame to fortune, McQueen's Hollywood power moves in the 1960s and 1970s. Steve McQueen wasn't just famous, he was powerful. He had become one of the highest paid actors in the world. His breakout roles in The Great Escape and Bullitt made him an icon. In Bullitt, he performed his own driving stunts through the hills of San Francisco, and that green Mustang fastback became a symbol of speed and cool. Years later, the same car sold for $3.7 million at auction. But McQueen wasn't just making money on screen, he was making smart deals behind the scenes. In The Towering Inferno, he negotiated a deal that gave him a share of the film's profits. That move alone earned him over $12 million. He even charged $50,000 just to read a script. If he passed on the role, he kept the money anyway. These weren't just star demands, they were business moves. McQueen had figured out how to turn his image into power. He started to control his wardrobe, camera angles, and even editing. Producers gave him what he wanted because audiences couldn't get enough of him. Yet while others were partying in Hollywood, McQueen was wearing jeans to red carpets and skipping interviews. His mystery became part of his brand, and it worked. Behind that silent stare was a businessman who knew exactly what he was doing: hidden deals, silent investments, and a Honda Surface. While McQueen was becoming a Hollywood rebel on camera, off camera, he was building a quiet empire. One of his smartest moves involved motorcycles and a brand few expected: Honda. McQueen allowed his image to be used in Honda's U.S. marketing campaigns, and sales exploded. He even had a stake in their profits long after he stopped racing. On screen, the deal kept paying him. He was also deeply involved in off-road desert racing, not just for fun, but to promote gear and motorcycles that he secretly had financial ties to. Companies paid him just to be seen using their products. It was modern branding long before influencers existed. On top of that, McQueen collected vintage cars, motorcycles, and watches, hundreds of them. He invested in land and real estate in places like California, Mexico, and Idaho, but he never flaunted any of it. Instead of showing off his wealth, he quietly stored his treasures in locked barns, temperature-controlled garages, and secret storage units. He wasn't just buying for fun, he was buying with purpose. Every car, every bike, every item he owned was chosen for its long-term value, while other stars lost their fortunes. McQueen's wealth kept growing quietly in the background. The barn discovery that changed everything in 2006, long after McQueen's death. A dusty barn in New Mexico was opened by his estate managers, and what they found inside stunned the world. Hidden away for decades were dozens of vintage motorcycles, helmets, leather jackets, movie props, and even personal racing gear with his name stitched inside. These weren't props for show, they were real, worn items, frozen in time. Experts who evaluated the collection estimated its worth at more than $30 million. It was like a treasure chest filled with Hollywood gold. This one discovery changed the way people saw McQueen's financial legacy. Until then, most assumed he had left behind only a small estate, but the barn showed a different truth. He had built a hidden empire, and it didn't stop there. McQueen also owned nearly 60 rare cars, including a 1963 Ferrari 250 GT Lusso, a Jaguar XKSS, and a legendary Mustang GT 390 from Bullitt. He even had a Porsche 917K, one of the most famous racing cars ever made. That Porsche later sold for over $14 million. Every vehicle, every watch, every item was an investment. McQueen didn't collect for fun. He collected for the future. A legacy that keeps growing. What's incredible is that McQueen's empire didn't stop earning money. After his death, it kept growing. Today, his estate earns millions every year from licensing deals, film rights, and branded merchandise. His name and face are still used in advertisements by companies like Tag Heuer and Triumph. Even old film reels he stored with personal notes are now used in streaming deals and documentaries. McQueen had planned ahead in ways no one expected. He made sure his brand could live on even when he couldn't. His vintage watches sell for hundreds of thousands, with one Rolex Submariner going for $234,000 and a Heuer Monaco from Le Mans auctioned for $2.2 million. Beyond the watches, he had investments in racing teams, businesses tied to dessert gear, and partial ownership in small companies. Every deal he made was designed to last. His estate continues to grow richer, all because McQueen understood the value of ownership, privacy, and strategy. He may have seemed like a rebel on screen, but behind the scenes, he was playing a long, smart game. His success was never just about acting, it was about knowing when to stay quiet and let his investments speak for him. The blueprint of a quiet billionaire's McQueen's life was full of speed, mystery, and unforgettable moments. But perhaps his greatest role was one that few people ever saw. He played the quiet billionaire, the silent investor, the man who let the world think he was just another movie star. In truth, he was building something bigger. While his peers lived loud, McQueen lived smart. He turned personal passion into private power. Every film he starred in, every car he drove, every deal he signed was a step toward a legacy that still earns to this day. He didn't need to flash gold or build mansions on the hills. His empire was hidden, but it was real. The barns, the land, the storage units, and the contracts all told the same story. Steve McQueen built wealth that would last for generations. He turned mystery into millions, silence into strategy, and cool into currency. Today, his family continues to benefit from his brilliance. His fortune didn't just make headlines, it changed what it means to leave a legacy. Steve McQueen may be gone, but his empire is still racing forward. Steve McQueen left behind a fortune so big, it made his family filthy rich. Have a look at Star's final days and a hidden truth. In November 1980, the world lost one of its most iconic movie stars, Steve McQueen, known for his roles in classics like Bullitt, The Great Escape, and Le Mans. McQueen was more than just a Hollywood actor. He was a symbol of rebellion, coolness, and effortless style. But his final days were filled with pain and secrecy. McQueen had been diagnosed with mesothelioma, a rare and aggressive cancer caused by asbestos exposure. Instead of seeking treatment in the U.S., he chose to undergo an unapproved and risky surgery in Mexico. The treatment involved letrol, a controversial substance made from apricot pits. Doctors in America warned against it, but McQueen, desperate for a cure, took the risk anyway. Sadly, he didn't survive the night. When news of his death broke, the media quickly jumped to conclusions. Headlines claimed that Steve McQueen had died broke. They said he had spent all his money on cancer treatments and had nothing left to pass on. It was a tragic story of a superstar who burned up bright and ended with nothing. But that wasn't the full story. In fact, the truth was hidden beneath layers of secrecy, private collections, and untapped business potential. What McQueen left behind wasn't just a fortune, it was a legacy that would continue to grow for decades after his passing. At the time of his death, McQueen's estate was estimated to be worth around $1 million, but that number didn't show the full picture. It only included basic things like bank accounts, properties, and known investments. What it didn't count were the valuable motorcycles, rare cars, movie royalties, and legal rights to his name and image. Many of his possessions weren't even listed properly, and some weren't discovered until years later. The real fortune, it turned out, was just waiting to be uncovered. Though that sparked questions and family conflicts to McQueen's will was written in January 1979, just under 2 years before he passed away. In that will, he made it clear who would inherit his wealth. He left most of his estate to his 2 children, Chad and Terry McQueen. However, one major name was left out: his ex-wife, Neil Adams. Despite being the mother of his children and a big part of his early Hollywood life, she was completely excluded from the will. This decision raised eyebrows, but McQueen had made up his mind. At the time of his death, McQueen was in a relationship with Barbara Minty. Many believe the two were planning to get married. Still, she was only given a few personal items in the will. She did not receive a large portion of his financial assets. This decision surprised many of his friends and fans, especially since she was by his side during his final days. Some believe McQueen might have planned to change the will had he lived longer, but we'll never know for sure. The most shocking part of the will was a legal clause that excluded any unknown or future children. In simple terms, this meant that if anyone came forward claiming to be McQueen's child, they would automatically be denied any inheritance. Not long after his death, a woman filed a lawsuit saying her son was McQueen's child. She claimed to have proof and wanted a portion of the estate, but the court threw the case out due to lack of evidence. Even more surprising, McQueen's lawyer later revealed that the other paternity claims had been handled quietly and privately. They never reached the court, and no financial details were shared with the public. This part of the will showed that McQueen and his legal team expected drama. They had planned ahead to shut down any possible disputes, but even with a well-written will, handling the estate wouldn't be easy. Many of McQueen's most valuable items were not clearly documented or tied to him legally. This created years of confusion, court battles, and searching for missing assets. Uncovering the hidden fortune piece by piece after McQueen's death, his family discovered that handling the estate was much harder than expected. Some of the actor's most valuable items, his classic cars, motorcycles, and personal memorabilia, were not officially listed in his name. This made it difficult to prove ownership. His children had to work with appraisers, collectors, and lawyers to track down and confirm what belonged to their father. In some cases, they had to buy back items through private auctions or negotiate with collectors who had acquired them through other means. But every item they recovered added value to the estate. One of the most important discoveries was McQueen's legal right of publicity. This right allowed his family to control how his name, image, and likeness could be used after his death. Back in 1980, not every celebrity had this kind of legal protection, but McQueen had thought ahead. This single legal right would later become one of the most profitable parts of his estate. McQueen's son, Chad, took on a major role in managing his father's legacy. He worked closely with licensing companies, approved branding deals, and kept a close watch on how his father's image was used. Terry McQueen, Steve's daughter, also helped until her death in 1998. Her share of the estate was passed on to her daughter, Molly. Barbara Minty, though not a main heir, became a public spokesperson for McQueen's life and worked to promote his story. As time went on, more pieces of the puzzle were found. Items that had been forgotten in barns, warehouses, and storage units were uncovered and authenticated. McQueen's personal cars and bikes were put on display or sold for millions at auctions. Each recovery added more value to the growing fortune. His brand, once thought to be fading, was now rising again, this time as a licensing empire. The licensing empire that nobody saw coming after Steve McQueen passed away. Many assumed his fame would slowly fade. New actors, new movies, and new trends were taking over. But something surprising happened. behind the scenes. Companies began to see incredible value in McQueen's image. They weren't just selling clothes or watches, they were selling a lifestyle. And Steve McQueen, with his cool attitude and rebellious charm, was the perfect symbol. By the 1990s, licensing deals using McQueen's image began to grow fast. One of the first major successes came from a photo of McQueen wearing a Barber jacket. The company used that single image to create a $40 million advertising campaign. It wasn't just fashion anymore, it was legacy. That photo became one of the most profitable still images in the history of marketing. People didn't just want the jacket. They wanted to feel like Steve McQueen. Next came Tag Heuer, the Swiss watch brand. They brought back the iconic Monaco watch, which McQueen had worn in Le Mans. The watch became a must-have item for collectors, and sales skyrocketed. McQueen's name was now more powerful than ever. Then came Ford, which brought back the Bullitt Mustang, commercials, posters, and special edition cars all lean on McQueen's legendary status. The car wasn't just a vehicle, it was a tribute. The real magic came from how carefully these deals were handled. The estate didn't approve every request. They protected McQueen's brand by saying no to cheap knockoffs and only approving projects that matched his style: cool, classic, and bold. This control kept the demand high and the value strong. Unlike other celebrity estates that flood the market, McQueen's team kept it exclusive. That strategy paid off year after year. Global fame, brand power, and a lasting legacy as McQueen's image spread across the globe. His fame found new life in unexpected places, in Japan, Europe, and even parts of South America. Steve McQueen became a symbol of luxury and coolness. His face was used to sell high-end jeans, racing gear, and even cologne. Marketing experts said his appeal never became too American, which helped his image cross borders easily. Younger generations who had never seen his movies still knew his name and style. One of the key groups managing this empire was Greenlight Licensing Group. They worked closely with the estate to handle legal rights, approve products, and protect trademarks. Every year, licensing revenue grew, sometimes reaching into the tens of millions. In fact, by the 2010s, Forbes ranked Steve McQueen as one of the highest-earning dead celebrities. Alongside names like Michael Jackson and Elvis Presley, his son, Chad McQueen, also played a big role in protecting the family's fortune. He fought against fake products, filed lawsuits when needed, and helped create smart licensing deals. His decisions were not just emotional, they were strategic. He knew that the McQueen brand had to be treated like a business, and every step mattered. Even car brands continued to pay tribute. In 2017, Porsche worked with the estate to launch a Le Mans tribute collection. Special edition cars, events, and merchandise followed. McQueen's face returned to TV screens and magazine covers, not as a man of the past, but as a living legend. Collectors and fans rushed to buy anything connected to his name. Conclusion: from actor to imperative, McQueen didn't just leave behind a few $1 million. He left behind a fortune hidden in garages, locked in photos, and written into contracts. His family didn't just inherit wealth, they inherited a legacy that would keep growing with time. From licensing deals to museum exhibits, from luxury fashion to high-end car campaigns, McQueen's name became more valuable with each passing year. Today, his estate is worth tens of millions. Some experts say the value could be even higher, depending on how active the licensing deals are. But one thing is clear: McQueen's brand doesn't need new movies or new performances. His legacy sells itself. And for his family, that legacy turned into a never-ending source of income, pride, and power. Steve McQueen was more than a Hollywood star. He was a blueprint for how a legend is made and how that legend, even in death, can build a fortune that never stops growing. The legend that keeps paying off. Steve McQueen was one of the most famous actors in Hollywood. During the 1960s and 70s, he was known for his cool attitude, his love of fast cars, and his unforgettable performances in films like Bullitt, The Great, Escape, and Le Mans. But what many people don't realize is that after his death in 1980, his name became even more powerful. In fact, Steve McQueen's estate has made more money since his death than it did while he was alive. This didn't happen because of new movies or interviews. It happened because his image, his lifestyle, and his legacy were turned into a brand, and that brand still brings in millions every year. McQueen never talked about building a business empire, but that's exactly what happened. His family, especially his son and granddaughter, made sure his name stayed alive not just as a memory, but as a symbol of freedom, speed, and quiet strength. Today, Steve McQueen's legacy is worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and it continues to grow. Chad McQueen, the guardian of the brand after Steve McQueen passed away. His son Chad McQueen stepped into the spotlight not as an actor, but as the protector of his father's legacy. Chad had already worked in movies and later became a professional race car driver, following in his father's footsteps. But what really changed his life was managing the McQueen name. He created McQueen Racing LLC and helped sign licensing deals with companies that wanted to use Steve's image for cars, clothes, and more. He didn't just protect his father's memory, he turned it into a business. Today, Chad is estimated to be worth over $45 million. This wealth didn't come from movies or fame. It came from smart decisions and careful control of the McQueen brand. He made sure that every product carrying his father's name had meaning and quality. Fans around the world still buy jackets, posters, and car parts linked to Steve McQueen. Thanks to Chad's efforts, the brand remains strong, and the money keeps flowing in even decades after Steve's death. Terry and Molly, the women behind the son of Steve McQueen, had a daughter named Terry McQueen. Unlike her brother Chad, Terry didn't seek fame. Instead, she worked behind the scenes in the film industry and became an executive at Universal Studios. She stayed out of the public eye and focused on her own life. Sadly, Terry passed away in 1998 after a liver transplant. But before she died, she made sure that her estate rights would be passed on to her daughter, Molly McQueen. Molly became part of the second generation of McQueens to carry the family legacy. She's an actress and producer, and she also works with the estate to manage her grandfather's image. Molly helps decide what products or projects can use Steve's name and likeness. She protects the brand's style and tone, and ensures that nothing damages the image her grandfather left behind. Through her work, Molly receives royalties and has access to the intellectual property rights tied to Steve McQueen. Her role may not be as visible as Chad's, but she is considered one of the key people protecting the family fortune and legacy today. Barbara Minnie's quiet comeback at the time of Steve McQueen's death. He was engaged to a woman named Barbara. Minnie, she had been a model and was his third wife. Although she was named in his will, Barbara did not receive a large portion of the estate. She was given personal belongings, letters, and memorabilia, but not a major share of the wealth. For years, she remained in the background. However, as Steve McQueen's image became more valuable, Barbara found new ways to participate. She co-produced several documentaries about Steve and published a book called Steve McQueen, The Last Mile, which became a bestseller. Over time, she began earning royalties from projects where she was involved. Barbara was also allowed to consult on certain branding decisions. While her share of the money isn't as large as Chad's, she has earned respect and some financial success through her efforts to preserve Steve's memory. She remains a soft-spoken but important figure in how the world remembers the king of cool. The forgotten wife. Neil Adams, Steve McQueen's first wife, was Neil Adams, and she was the mother of both Chad and Terry during Steve's early career. Neil supported him emotionally and professionally. She introduced him to important people in Hollywood and helped him build his name. But when Steve passed away, Neil was left with nothing. She wasn't mentioned in the will. She received no property, no money, and no recognition for years. Neil has spoken publicly about this painful experience. She often said she felt erased from Steve's life. Though she never filed a legal case, her books and interviews expressed deep sadness. Despite being the mother of his children, she was shut out completely from the estate. Her exclusion is one of the most talked about and heartbreaking parts of Steve McQueen's legacy. It shows that while the fortune grew, not everyone who helped build it was included. Neil's story reminds us that behind every great legend, there are people whose contributions are sometimes forgotten. The hidden, and mysterious claim in 1969, while filming overseas, Steve McQueen allegedly had a short affair. Years later, the woman involved claimed that her son was Steve's child. However, McQueen never acknowledged this, and there was no DNA test or legal claim at the time. The child received nothing and remained in the shadows. When the mother died in 2012, the story seemed to end. But in 2023, new evidence appeared: letters, receipts, and personal documents that hinted at a possible connection. Now, lawyers working for the man believe they may have a case. They are preparing to bring the claim back to court. If this man is proven to be Steve McQueen's son, it could change everything. The McQueen estate is worth over $100 million, and even a small share could be life-changing. The estate has not made a public statement, while legal experts say the new evidence may be strong enough to reopen the case. This hidden chapter could lead to a new twist in the story of Steve McQueen's fortune. The money keeps growing. Once Steve McQueen died in 1980, his estate was worth less than $2 million. For someone who was once Hollywood's highest-paid actor, this number seems surprisingly low. Many believe that cancer treatments and a quiet lifestyle had drained his savings, but over time, people began to see the real value of his image, his legacy, and his belongings. Today, the McQueen brand is worth around $100 million and keeps growing every year. Some of the most valuable items include his Bullitt Mustang, which sold for $3.7 million, and his Le Mans racing suit, which brought nearly $1 million at auction. Even his sunglasses sold for tens of thousands of dollars. These sales didn't just bring money, they kept Steve McQueen's memory alive. His image became a symbol of classic style, speed, and confidence, and because the estate has stayed true to who Steve was, fans continue to buy everything that carries his name. From film star to global brand, Steve McQueen never gave speeches about business, and he never tried to build a personal brand. He simply lived the life he wanted: fast cars, deep silence, and selective roles. But that way of living turned into something much bigger. His name became a symbol, and that symbol now powers one of the most successful legacies in Hollywood. In 2024, Porsche even released a special edition car named after him, the McQueen 911. It sold out within days. Buyers weren't just paying for a car, they were buying into a lifestyle, a story, and a feeling that only Steve McQueen could represent. His ranch in Idaho, where he used to relax away from fame, is still owned by the family, while most parts of his legacy have been turned into business. The ranch remains a quiet place, a reminder of who he really was behind the fame. It's where his descendants still gather, away from the noise of the world. The secret vault that holds the final chapter. There's one part of Steve McQueen's legacy that remains hidden, a mysterious vault. People close to the family say that this vault holds letters, scripts, and even a final voice recording. Some believe there are handwritten notes to James Dean, a script for a prison escape movie Steve never made, and an audio message recorded just before his death. The vault has never been opened publicly, and its contents are still a mystery. But if it's real, it could reveal Steve McQueen's deepest thoughts, his feelings about fame, his regrets, and maybe even a message he wanted to leave behind. The longer it stays locked, the more powerful the legend becomes. For fans and historians alike, the vault represents the final piece of the puzzle. It's a reminder that even after all the money, fame, and branding, Steve McQueen might still have more to say. Conclusion: a legacy beyond the gravest. Of McQueen never planned to become a global brand. He never set out to build an empire. He lived with passion, acted with purpose, and kept his personal life quiet. But sometimes, it's that exact mystery that makes someone unforgettable. Today, his estate earns more each year than many top actors. His image appears on cars, clothes, and posters, and his attitude still inspires new generations. From Chad to Molly to fans around the world, people continue to protect and grow the legacy of the man known as the King of Cool. Whether or not the vault is open, one thing is clear: Steve McQueen's story isn't finished. Not yet.